file tree, and I would do a probabilistic rank of the files I think I should open, and then I would open those 3, and that just wasn't nearly as good as that semantic representation.
Because you could probably put the whole semantic window into context every time.
And that semantic context compression is, you're literally compressing exactly what the LLM needs to be incredibly productive.
Is it just the function definitions, or is it?
So I've been playing with
does the name of the function must matter because it's telling the LLM what it's doing. So
I love how this stuff fucks with people so much, including myself. So to start, I think the initial agent is essentially just asking for a list of functionalities that can be compressed into 500 words or something. But the fascinating thing is a human's not qualified to write the prompt. So what that brings up is you actually want to have a system that iterates on that prompt design with KPIs. So the KPI would be, what is your hit rate on complicated code changes, and how many iterations do you need to fix it? Because I can start with that, but you can imagine. I think you're going to move into a scenario where these systems are not designed by humans. So that semantic compression, no human designed it. The human has to.
So you're optimizing for how many ChatGPT API calls you're making.
Yeah, you want to minimize the number of API calls, because ideally once you get to that 1-to-1 hit rate, then that is a game changer.
Does that connect at all to the fluid dynamics?
So the fluid dynamics is using so people talk about agentic workflows, which the thing that's a little annoying about agentic workflows is everyone was already doing it. It was common sense. Like anyone that started using OpenAI and you ask it to write some data science code, and then you say, this code isn't good, make it better. That's called reflection. Like it's a little annoying when everyone
they were modularizing that pattern basically.
Adaptive workflows, that's where you have multiple agents that are chasing a goal, and that's where they're able to collaborate. And so that's something I've been obsessed about for a very long time.
We're talking about the fluid dynamics portion of the presentation.
So the fluid dynamics example, there is a goal. I didn't show it on the screen, but those images are getting scored. So they have an assessment. And so you're producing hundreds of images that are being scored, and you're collaborating and you're trying to maximize the score.
What was the thing that you did before that? Or did you just jump to it because you're classically trained as a mechanical engineer? Like, how did you jump to that?
So there's no creative human in that process. So those images you saw, it's trying to win the competition.
I see.
No one is saying fluid dynamics matter. No one is saying.
Yeah, it just came up with it.
So it sees the competition and then it just.
That was my question because also remember that spike, that blue spike for the middle in your slide.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm getting goosebumps. That's what that is. That's what that is. In my mind. And you guys, do you guys see that, or do you guys?
What do you mean by the spike on the 42 projects?
Yeah. What were we gonna say?
Yeah,
I remember. I guess he meant the one that scored the highest.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you think about evolutionary processes, you have mutations and jitter, and that's what's happening. You're getting lucky. So if you have a project designed 1,000 times, you're gonna get lucky.
You're gonna get lucky, which is the whole hallucinating, brainstorming. Yeah.
So then, how would you recommend gaining confidence to make sure that you're at what point do you cross the line into confidence to make those outputs more deterministic if we're using biased data sets? That's the challenge I've been struggling with the last 2 days because I'm just getting into this. I'm coming from a background where I used to be the dev, then I went to managing DevOps. Then in my last org, I got off the technical role to just enforce principles to make sure that our escalation paths were good. So it was a Series D company. We had gotten to 56 million, and then investors kind of pulled, so we went through that whole firing your friends thing. My best man actually just laid me off in April.
Okay.
So I'm here to just get industry context, and the thing that's been bugging me is everyone talking about golden data sets for their training when they're building their LLMs, and because they're non-deterministic, it just kind of confuses me how you can depend on validation.
Mhm.
So what are the challenges when you go into production?
Well,
Like the level of how do you define your confidence levels?
so I think the challenge is production is never as simple as just a one-to-one, like an agent that's doing work. Oftentimes, you might have multiple agents where one of them is doing like a kind of a risk assessment. Like think of like a really lightweight agent that is just trying to determine what is the risk of this having a negative outcome, and then that gets kicked into another workflow. I think one of the funny things with generative AI right now is it's been a disappointment in the market. So the vast majority of companies,
People can't code like you. They can't.
Well, it's
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a disappointment.
Yeah, I think there's an analogy that's attached to that, and it's this is a new tool, and whoever uses it the most will become the most competent. And there's a lot of lessons and rules that are not like you've probably heard people talk about catastrophic forgetting, but you
Don't understand.
using these tools, you get a real sense of like when it shows up and why.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, so catastrophic forgetting is, let's say you have some function like a routes file, you've got an API, you've got all your routes, and you ask AI to add a new route. Very simple request. And you are being lazy, you don't want to copy just the new function, you want it to give the whole file. Give me a new route, give me the whole file. You copy it, you paste it in, and then your whole system breaks. And then you find out that it forgot one of the functions. So that's called catastrophic forgetting. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Does that fall into the category of a hallucination?
Similar.
It's
but
a
not
little
the same.
different because it's not making stuff
just a
up, it
massive
actually
fuck up.
forgot something.
Didn't you
So-
mention that too with during your presentation? You didn't call it catastrophic. You called it something that was the same meaning of a catastrophic failure.
So
In your
I think
presentation.
in my talk, one of the things we celebrate is hallucinations because we think it's the key to innovation. We want
Good hallucinations. Yeah.
Good-
It's
injecting
imagination.
inspirations actually maximizes hallucinations. But yeah, that example, the catastrophic forgetting, if you're not familiar with how to fix it, then what happens to most people is they stub their toe on it and they get frustrated and then they throw it all away and they say it's not ready, I'm gonna wait. But for people, I would say 5 or 10% of engineers, they go into a category where they're determined to fix it. So if you're in that mindset that you will fix, you'll actually be delighted with where you end up. So the catastrophic forgetting example, you can fix it. You can immediately code in an agent like, hey, by the way, if the lines of code ever drop more than 10%, kick this off, do this process, do this. You don't need to be the human in the loop for
Hold
that.
on, I interrupted him when you were saying something.
No.
So is that? Sorry.
So this problem that you faced, was it because of the context was too high or was just too long?
I've become more less trusting of LLMs. So typically it's because the context is too big. But even for small edits, I've still seen examples where you remind me of another point. The way AI designs code will be different than humans. So AI wants maximum modularization. So the dream scenario, if AI could actually fulfill its dream, every function would be a file and it would be like the craziest JSON structure you've seen. But if I'm a human, if I give you that code, you're gonna yell at me.
Yeah.
You'll be like, what the
it's
hell,
spaghetti.
dude? Like,
It's a spaghetti of
like I've got a life.
I'm having
not-
flashbacks to get
Just
left.
give me
Yeah.
a picture.
maximum
Yeah.
modular. Maximum modular.
Yeah.
What was that last one?
It's going to want to maximize modularization,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
reason is when you have a code edit, like, hey, I need this thing done,
You can never
it's-
edit it.
like surgical precision. It goes right there. It does the change. And this is another really fun concept. The other thing that's really powerful is having AI. I haven't done a demo of this yet, but I wanted to show having AI randomly delete files in the projects and rebuilding them without context.
In order to serve what function? Just
In order to improve the whole system. So
I
like
see,
if you
because you're
have
destroying.
automated tests, as long as you can measure that the project ran and it's working, and if you have AI going in there and like nuking parts of the code and rebuilding it,
Yeah,
that's
it will end up
amazing.
with really small files.
If you have the
to maximize or to minimize the delete.
And then
Yeah.
what do you call that? creative destruction,
Some
restructuring.
kind of optimization.
In building
Yeah.
understanding.
So I see a future where I was saying this on the internet a couple months ago that you have the old way of building product, which was impossible. You spend 10 years building something and have monster technical debt. The old way.
I understand.
Hugs,
Yeah.
Hugs Series D.
We started in 2012.
Old products.
So I think the
Yikes.
new way, you will build an entire product daily from the ground up.
I know.
And you will have KPIs and ways to measure that. So what that means is if there's a new library coming online,
Oh,
so if someone announces a new type of like fast API, or if they announce a new thing, your entire project is getting built every day. And then the humans are going to spend a lot more of their time designing the assessments. So
KPI.
the engineers are not going to be fired and go away. The engineer's job will now go to how do we come up with systems that can consume 10 times the code that's produced, and how do we... You're living in a world of infinite compounding. So before, engineers have to write functions that they wrote yesterday, or they're just kind of doing the work. But now, everything is going to be compounded. That, like going back to the GitLab runner logs, like why are you looking at an exception, and why is that exception not having n attempts before it was brought to your attention? Like that should just be...
when you bring that up, I wish Will, who's a brand new friend, were sitting exactly for that, because he literally said of what his problem was, and I'm like, I don't have the solution for it. I have part of the solution for it, and then right there. Before we proceed, do I have your consent
Oh,
to
sure.
record?
Yeah.
Do you like how I do the dating thing where I get consent after I started?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a joke.
Okay.
What?
I got
So-
dark. It's too early.
It
man.
really, well, this whole conversation's like magical, and a little bit
Man,
of darkness with the
what
light.
time is
So
it?
I gave a talk at Berkeley once, and at the end of the talk I said, too bad this talk is recorded because I couldn't talk about it's about the data robot stuff. So data robot was like a very explosive resignation. There's lots of drama, and it was just funny because you reminded me at the end of the talk I had to tell the students like, well, unfortunately I can't talk about that because we're being recorded right now. So the students were mad. They're like, damn it, we want to know about the $7 million party.
Data robot.
So, yeah. Yeah, happy. Any other questions anyone has about?
Can I ask you a personal
I love personal
machine
questions.
learning. So, given the last role, I spent 5 years just completely sedentary. I'm trying to reset my health so that I can focus on the next venture.
Okay.
And I tried to get into running, and you mentioned you do ultra marathons.
Yeah.
I've gained like 100 pounds since I started that last job, and I'm trying to
2012.
from 2019 on, because that's when I moved to San Francisco. We weren't really moving too much. Then COVID exacerbated that because we were remote, so I never left my house for a while. Because anyway, the point is, I'm trying to get to a place where I'm trying to find physical challenges, and I've noticed there's a consistency with guys in tech doing alpinist activities and running and doing what you were in there. So that's like an aspiration of mine. How do you recommend starting without injury? Because I immediately had a tear in my hamstring that I just recovered from.
Oh, okay. It's
I'd be very careful.
Yeah,
Well,
I hit up the softball league and I felt a pop, and I've been sitting down all summer.
So I think one of the things that helps prevent injury is
Thank you so much.
if you make it a routine, like maybe twice a week you'll run 5 miles in the morning. You can do it less than an hour. It's not a big time commitment. You can be listening to a book, but don't focus on the speed. So I like to tell people a very, very slow run, it's still a run. Like it still fucking counts. So if you're doing that consistently, the body will adapt. The next 4 to 6 months, you'll be in a situation where you never get injuries. The body's
That's a dream.
yeah. Well, it's amazing what the body does. So I do trail running. So I'll run. So occasionally I'll do like the 50-mile runs, but I'll regularly do like 15 to
Crazy.
25-mile runs at night. in mountain lion country.
Talk about your regeneration
It's a
routine.
marathon. You can do marathons at night.
Yeah,
Talk
well, and
about
I
your
do it with like
regeneration.
crampons too. So I do it in the winter
Oh,
too.
dude, that's
With
so much.
crampons?
Yeah. So I ran 10 miles with
like when people
crampons
go
2
into
days
like
ago.
climb an iceberg or something.
Oh,
to like
wild.
step into the
But
ice.
it's-
That's why.
Oh.
I want to
meant
see
to-
you and David
meant to-
Goggins in the room.
Some people tease me of being the David Goggins of AI
It sounds like it.
because going back to being addicted to challenges. So once I did my first ultra, and then I figured out the science, because the ultra is actually there's a science to it, and I was too arrogant to pay attention.
Interesting. So you didn't want to do the protocols that
Well-
were already laid out to you?
All I know is you have to carry salt pills for some reason.
Yeah. So my first ultra, I show up to the race, and everyone's with those like running vests with like the waters and stuff. And I've got a backpack on. I'm like, look at these losers. Like,
Interesting.
and I have like Gatorades in my backpack. And so we start running, and I'm trying to stay with like the pack.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm in the front of the pack with like these other 7 people. This is awesome. And I didn't realize the muscle damage that was happening to my calves to do that because I
Interesting.
was not trained. And then when you go, there's eight aid stations, and people are eating like pigs, like pickles and
Yeah, yeah.
watermelon, and you feel like shit, and you're gonna throw up. And then the 7th aid station, my calf looked like a hamster was in it for 30 minutes. Like that's bad.
Yeah, because your muscle like
Yeah.
curdling.
Well, and so after that whole experience, I finished the race. It took 19 hours, which was terrible. Then once I figured out the science is, well, all of your fluids are completely dialed with an exact amount of electrolytes that you have figured out for your body. Perfect. And then when you actually don't stop and eat, you'll take like a Cliff Bar and you'll slowly pulverize it. Like I might spend 10 minutes eating a Cliff Bar, because what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're being so
Expending.
kind to your stomach. And you're not like, so the people showing up, they're like, oh, time to eat. 10 minutes of eating. Oh, time to go on a run. Like,
That's crazy.
that's the shittiest experience you could
Just know
possibly
that.
do.
Yeah.
But so that approach, I would argue anyone can run a 50-mile ultra. You just have to just make a routine
Maybe
for 3
walk.
months.
Maybe walk. I don't know about run.
Well,
Just
now,
doing the walk is gonna be tough.
So then finish your learning curve.
oh, so the learning curve, the new thing is once I figured out how to do the ultras, then I started to wonder, can you do it with no calories? So my new thing now is I ran 50 miles, 0 calories. So no sugar, no carbs, no protein.
So you're keto.
And I have 0 calorie electrolytes.
It's not dangerous.
It's not dangerous if your electrolyte gain is dialed. If your electrolyte
But
gain
you had to do
is-
it the right way before you did it like your new
Well,
way.
it took practice. So what I mean by that is, so if you just decide you're going to go run, even a marathon, just like I'm going to run a marathon right now. People talk about hitting the wall. So you're running mile 13 or 15. You'll definitely have a wall if you don't have electrolytes. But even if you have electrolytes, you'll hit what feels like a wall, and that's where your body's completely run out of glucose. Like your system, you need to get some energy. And the thing that's fascinating is, I found that by practicing running fasted, the body these systems kick into gear much earlier. So I don't hit a wall. So if I'm running 20 miles,
ketogenic metabolism.
yeah, like the body's just like, oh, here we fucking go. But I have a goal to run 100 miles with 0 calories. There's another person on the internet who's done that.
You should call the news when you try it.
But
That's nuts. I think that would make the
There,
video.
there are races like that, right? Or do they all have calories?
0 calorie 100 mile. I don't
I
know.
don't think
in the
there's
desert
races.
or
I
something.
think they're already dangerous enough.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would want to sign up for that legal liability.
Sure.
But I don't know why I like that stuff so much. It's
It's just as interesting.
It's like the human body's a lab rat. So you just
It's a startup in itself.
Yeah.
When you complete it, you
Well,
do the
it's
startup.
the funny thing about running is I didn't plan to get into running, but when Data Robot was going sideways, I was so angry. These like dickheads that are like destroying the company. So I started to run to like vent the energy, and then I'm like, one day I run 10 miles, one day I run 15 miles, one day I run like 23 miles in the mountains, and then I realized like, oh, I guess now I don't run because I'm pissed off. But I count running as work. Every step's an idea.
But it
Like
sounds
whatever you're dealing with.
productive.
Yeah. But
It helps.
walking even helps.
Yeah, walking's really good for the brain. But the other thing too is, this is not advice, but I do running at night in Utah in the mountains, and we have mountain lions and coyotes and stuff. And so,
There's mountain lions in Utah.
Yeah.
Never been.
So I've
Wolves.
So he
we
carries
don't
a
have
gun
wolves.
and-
So
That
I
makes sense. I'm from
I
New York
once-
City, so this is like weird to me.
so once I came across the fresh deer kill, and that's when I used to run with a gun.
He does it.
You ran with a gun, did you say?
Well, I used to run with like a
I was making a
380.
joke.
But when I came across this deer, so there's this dead deer in the trail, and it's bleeding. But normally you see deer bones, you don't see a deer. So when I saw this deer, I got really scared. And the funny thing is, it always takes you longer to get your gun out than you think it will. So when you see the deer, you're just like, oh, fuck. Like, it probably only takes 3 seconds, but in your mind, you're just like,
Time
a
slows
minute
down.
later.
Time
It's
slows
like
down.
when you're you ever punch somebody in your dream and it's just
Oh, yeah.
it never
yes.
connects or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, but after that experience, I was so upset with how I behaved.
Yeah.
Because I ran with a gun for like a mile. And then I just felt like, you just felt so vulnerable. Like, what if it attacks me and I like shoot and I miss it 6 times? Well, then I'm fucked. And so after that,
Which
like,
happens a lot. People, which happens a lot, where you unload your whole clip and
Yeah.
you hit nothing.
So I got rid of the gun.
Knife now.
And now I've got 2 fixed blades on my ribs that have the thumb, like the Japanese, that have the thumb, and they're serrated.
Have
and
you
curved.
used this, or is this?
No, that's my running setup, and I feel so much more confident because now my ammo is unlimited, and
And it's more ergonomic, whereas the gun is like
Yeah.
the weighted gun,
Well,
and then you got to flip hands. Maybe.
and this is like 2-second deployment.
Okay.
And so even if I got like tackled and I lose one, and so there probably is a scenario in the future where, this sounds super morbid, but I used to get nervous to go running at night because I have to go running, but I'm gonna go way up there in the snow, and no one goes up there in the winter, and it's probably maybe there's
Oh
not
yeah,
like it's a
dudes
bad,
like me and you, like we pass away during situations like that. It's never just yeah.
Well, so the oh no behavior now is over here. So now if I'm
But what's
running,
over there?
well,
It's the
well, now the thing that's over here is mentally, because mentally to run at night is not fun. Like mentally, you have to try to get over here. Because if I'm over here, I won't go running. But over here,
over here is daytime. I'm lost.
Oh,
You guys lost?
oh
You guys
yeah.
lost?
So what
I
I'm
think it's
saying
like
is,
a
so when I-
spectrum of motivation or something.
so now
Is that what it is?
mentally, if I
That's
see
the
a
dark
mountain
side.
lion
This is
at
the-
night, instead of oh no, oh dear, it's fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Like
because
that's,
you've wired the pain
that's what you're
pleasure
trying to
and
wire
Take
the
out
brain
his
for.
red lightsaber and
Like you're
kill
looking
that.
forward
Yeah.
to.
No,
Okay.
finish your point. Is it because you juxtaposed the pain and pleasure, or
Well, you're trying to fix the fight or flight. Because the fight or flight,
Fix
when you
fight or
see
flight.
eyes at night,
Fix is a weird word to use, but yes.
Do you have any questions about this stuff, or are you getting all of it?
I'm getting all of it.
yeah. So fight or flight, what I've noticed, because I see glowing eyes at night, so you're running around the corner and you see eyes, they're glowing, and the longer it takes for you to decide the fight or flight, the more intense the response. But if the response is always on the fight side, then it's less intense. Does that make sense? Like, so if I see glowing eyes and I have to make the assessment of what's happening, then it's extremely stressful. But if you're over here, then it's the stress is quite low. This is not fun to.
Okay, let's bridge over to how is that fight or flight also how you've launched product in the past, and talk about that fight or flight.
Well, so I think with startups, there's. So the first time I did a startup, I was super arrogant.
Is this in?
So I was leaving HireVue. In HireVue, we launched a successful AI product. We had a great team, and so I felt like it was that attitude of fun. I'd worked at the hedge fund. I'd worked at HireVue. We delivered 14 patents in 2 years, and we shipped a successful AI product, and everyone on the team had a PhD in physics. So you just felt this momentum.
2010, circa?
2000, it was
12?
16. So I had the arrogance of like, well, what would happen if I was in charge? Like, look with this, what would happen if I was in charge and we're just going to go take over the world? And what I didn't realize, I appreciate it now, it doesn't matter how smart someone thinks they are. Like, you find the smartest data scientists in that room, well, there's a really good chance that they're idiots. Sales, marketing, product, customer success. And that was something I did not appreciate and understand, that there's so many other aspects to building a business that you have no idea about. And even repeat founders will still complain about making similar mistakes. So
I feel like a lot of that came from trying to manage not hiring wrong from the get-go. Because you often try to look for a level of expertise, but sometimes inherently with that expertise came that arrogance that would be a blocker.
But
Do you feel like you agree with that?
startups are complicated because they're so unique.
Yeah.
Like there's general themes that you were mentioning from Y Combinator. They're like truths. Like you can imagine a startup Bible, but there's other themes that we spent a lot of time with SpaceX because we were trying to close SpaceX as a customer. So we were on site 7 times. And we're moving into the contract phase. We're doing X-ray weld defect detection for them, which is awesome. But the advice I would give to other founders is you have you're not at a stage that you can qualify a vanity brand. So if you're pre-seed,
That's such a great point.
it's way too dangerous to try to go after a vanity brand.
That's such a great point.
But it's a lot of startups won't hear that advice.
Oh, they hate that advice because that's the Hail Mary of if I just got into my Reach College, University of Illinois, all my problems would be solved.
Yeah. Well, they
Jokes, folks. Jokes.
Well, it's like they think if they can get that vanity brand on their website, that
Everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. Well, there's also a terrible. We signed a letter of intent from Data Robot our first year.
That's good.
It is good, but it's distracting.
Oh, because now you're trying to ride 2 horses with 1 ass.
Well, you have a revenue multiplier. So you have a revenue multiplier
Via the LOI.
Well, so
Where's the revenue multiplier?
So typically revenue multipliers, it's 10, or if you're in a good market, it's 40 for a
Revenue
multiple.
multiplier for valuation?
Yeah,
10x.
I was thinking money, more money, not
So-
the valuation.
So
multiple.
it's this awkward conversation. What is your company worth? So we
I
have
get
like
it now.
press release.
That's the revenue multiplier.
yeah. So we had 300,000 revenue, and
Yeah,
we were
yeah,
asking for this
yeah.
ridiculous multiplier. And the funny thing is, you have revenue multipliers, and then you have revenue momentum. There's like this.
That's what I was mishearing the momentum
Yeah.
with the multiplier. 'Cause
Yeah.
Why would you even think about valuation?
So if you feel like your revenue momentum is tracking into the upper percentiles, then your multiples, whatever the fuck you say it is,
Yeah.
it was just so stupid because you, as a first-time founder, you get really amped up. So we actually backed out of the LOI with Data Robot. We were a month and a half in. We presented the board. We're going to close, and we think we're in the middle of closing SpaceX, and we think we're in the middle of closing Farmers Insurance, and so we look at our revenue momentum, and we decide that the startup is amazing, and so we backed out of the LOI, and Jeremy was pissed. Yeah,
Jeremy,
the
from
founder of Data Robot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's like, you guys are idiots chasing valuation
Well,
versus chasing momentum.
he's pissed because it actually fucks with him.
Wait,
Because
wait, what was that last part? What was that last part?
Well,
Jason with his wife?
well, he's pissed because it's a very shitty thing to do.
Okay.
Because if
And what did you say?
Chasing profitability.
What?
Chasing profitability instead of valuation.
Oh, chasing revenue.
well,
Chasing revenue.
it's hard to sell a company your first year because you're an optimist. It's easier to sell it later when you're a realist. But the reason it's a shitty thing to back out of an acquisition is an acquisition is a very intimate thing. So come and meet with the board, come and meet with the talent.
Wait. He wasn't just doing revenue. He wanted to give you revenue and buy your company.
No, he's just gonna buy the company. So
I got confused because
we nearly joined Data Robot the first year, and then we ended up selling to them 3 years later.
That's really fast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
doesn't
super
make sense
fast.
to sell your first
That's
year.
insane.
But it was a deep learning company in 2017,
Yeah.
so that was
Super
like
well
right at the
timed.
peak of the hype, which is funny because I thought we were starting it too late. I was like, we didn't join the
How
deep...
many times have you started that exact company? Have you thought about doing an incubator accelerator yourself, where you're just spinning off stuff that you thought? Do you see what I'm saying? So you yourself are a sequel corporation in the same way that he asked Anon, was it? Yeah, Anon was like, hey, why don't you just focus on that?
The code generation.
Oh,
Like,
well,
isn't that a company?
It is a company. Well, it's funny because I've been talking to CTOs. They're like, yeah, generative algorithms, that's cool. But that,
Yeah, exactly.
Like-
Exactly. It's like,
it's, well, the other thing too that one of my investors was texting me because I posted on LinkedIn that like, look, I've got a hacker agent that hacks my system. I like it. And he texted me, he's like, well, isn't that a product too? And it's like, well, sort of, but you kind of have to do one thing. And I think with a startup, you have to be really good at one thing. That development stack helps me do the one thing, and the security helps me do the one thing, because it's. But the dream scenario would be you would have multiple products like that. So if you get to like Series A, then you begin having
diversifying.
But yeah, I love having my system get hacked every day. It makes me so happy.
It's like Chaos Monkey on steroids.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I love when it blocks me out. So just using the system is like I'm blocked. I'm like, fuck, why am I blocked? And then you go back into like, because the dream scenario is a tripwire, and I think this is why this is so interesting from a hacker perspective, from a safety perspective. Because before, as a hacker, like let's say you have a website that's hosted on your home because you were clever enough to do that. If you went and looked at the logs, you'd be a little nervous when you see what's happening in your logs, because all day long there's so many people that are doing this. But with these AI systems, it becomes this incredibly aggressive tripwire that if I'm a hacker, I'm no longer given the luxury of poking around. I can only poke you once,
Yeah.
and if I poke wrong,
Yeah.
I'm off. And so I'm very bullish on these AI systems.
That's why you say I love being hacked, because it's just like a person who's asking questions. You reveal so much about yourself because you attempted to poke.
Yeah. Well, it's the likelihood of you forgetting something or missing some like permission.
Incredibly high.
Yeah.
Incredibly high.
But now it's near zero if you have an LLM that is playing a game, and the game is seeing how many times it can ping your system without being detected.
Can you walk us through another time you launched product and then the lessons that you learned from like your launch?
So the HireView one was interesting. So we were launching the AI product.
The HireView one was 2016?
Yeah, or 2015.
Okay.
So we started launching the product, and communicating the value prop to the prospect was too complicated. So we were showing prospects AUC charts and talking about thresholds for cutoffs for candidates. And the thing I learned from the HireView experience is if you're showing something to executives, there's a hierarchy of value. So the hierarchy of value, the number one thing you want to show is a number with a dollar sign. If you can't show that, you show a number that they're already familiar with, a KPI. If you can't show that, you show a 3-bar chart. Like, bar on the right is higher than the bar on the left. And that's it. 3-bar chart. Anything below that is like
Stuff that the exec team doesn't want to.
It's bad. It's confusing. It's not clear.
It's general. It's
you want them to understand the plot in 5 or 10 seconds without you. But the fascinating thing is most things you can force it to a 3-bar chart.
Yeah.
Or even 2-bar chart. Just bar on the right's higher than bar on the left. And that's
executive team. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Do you understand the bar chart?
Well, the selling to executives, the conversation becomes very basic, very simple.
That's called protocol, computer science at Stanford Engineering Protocol, seasoned executive whisperer.
Yeah.
Can the exec team understand you while they're drunk, while they're trying to like organize their calendar, while they're trying to schedule their day?
It's a skill. I remember the first time I got a view into the room and I saw the difference between reporting lower in the org and then reporting to the execs, and it's like a
Yeah, it's a,
super streamlined. Like get to the point. I've got 2 seconds. Like I gotta go on another call.
It's fascinating because people don't realize this. When you sell software to an executive,
Yeah.
the politics that exist in the executive team are very intense. Like if everyone here is an executive working for a company, they seem friendly, but there's red checks and like someone's getting fired soon, and there's certain alliances, and so you understanding that if you're selling them software, your software could end up being a green check or it's a red X. And it doesn't matter if you're selling them $1 million of software or $50,000.
That's a huge point.
If it's a red X, they could literally get fired. Not because they bought your software, but it's the full story. And so when you think of it that way, you really have to be a promotion. And if they see you as
Would you say a promotional?
Don't sell software, sell promotions. So if they understand
For the exec team themselves, yes.
Yeah, so-
absolutely.
and
Because
their
they're buying you
their
software,
anxiety
you
goes
get fired.
down if you compress budgets and timelines. So if you say, hey, we're going to come, this is something I didn't understand when I was at Intel and Micron. I was pitching a project where it's like, this is science fact. This will make you $10 million this year. All the nerds agree, $10 million, no engagement.
Yeah.
And the reason they weren't engaged
Yeah.
is I'm saying I need 6 months, I need this leeway.
Yeah.
But if you say,
Yep.
I'm going to do this during my free time on the weekend, and the next 3 weeks you don't need to pay me for it, and I'm going to show you this, then it goes back to the urgency with the business. Like if you understand the urgency in the business and the market, I love talking to executives. Actually, with this new company, we only sell to
Oh, wait. Finish that last point. So, bring it home for us bring it all the way home for us with that point.
So the point there is the two most important things when it comes to selling, when you're selling to an executive, are authenticity and know your audience.
And then you almost were at that, but you didn't quite say it because I think you assumed that we extrapolated it. But did you mean what I'm extrapolating what you meant because I'm massively listening and paying attention? Do you mean then for us to fully walk people through avoiding the red checks? Because when you say 6-month engagement, isn't this motherfucking obvious? Then you say, and then that person doesn't have a time horizon or time preference. So finish that.
Well, I think the thought there is if you can bring clarity to reducing the time scale, making it clear what you're going to do, what your actions are, then because there's so much stuff in this space they don't understand and they don't give a shit. And actually, this is an important point. I remember trying to educate my CEO at HireVue about what an AUC is, why this is important, and I did. It's amazing I didn't get fired, and I actually like to tell people I was not on Mark Newman's top 10 priority list. Him firing me was not on his top 10 priority list because he's the CEO of this company, and he's worried about the quarter, he's worried about these things. And so I used to like show my work. I would meet with the CTO and CEO and say, we've been working really hard the last month. We did this iteration, we did this iteration, we did this iteration, and the current model is at 83% AUC, which is much better than these other ones. What do you think? And which is like the shittiest thing to say to a CEO. What do you think about this model? Like, that's what they hire. So
Too wide open.
this goes back to knowing your audience.
Prompting.
Well, now that I know my audience, I know that Mark is getting like 4-letter "fuck you" texts a week before the board meeting from like the biggest customer, and he has to deal with the way to payroll, and he's got his own political battles that he's fighting with the board. And so once you actually understand that, the efficiency in the communication is so much more effective. Like, you would never schedule an hour meeting with the CEO. Like, you're a dickhead if you do that. And now you leave everything out of the conversation that's not important. So when you get into so I'll give you 2 quick examples. So authenticity, humans have evolved to detect bullshit. They're really good at it, especially executives.
Oh, they're hyper great at that with zero vertical knowledge because they're so good
Yeah.
at sniffing.
So I had a high consequence sales meeting.
High consequence.
Like it was, we were losing the deal. It was supposed to be like 2.5 million. It's going to our competitor, and so the sales team thought they had to take care of it, but they're losing it. So they bring me in. I've got a 30-minute conversation with this executive buyer, and they think they've already lost the deal. And so in the conversation, I know who the competitor is, and I know the sales thinks we lost the deal. So the very first thing I say on the meeting is I say that competitor is better than us at two things.
Genius.
And I talk for
Genius.
10 minutes about why they're better than us at his two things. And then I gave myself permission to talk about why we're better at these three other things. And then we closed the deal. But the funny thing is when I got off the call, the sales leaders were mad at me. They're like, we never compliment a competitor. But then we got the deal. And this goes back to authenticity. Because if you are aware that a competitor is better about two things and you're knowledgeable in detail, it means you could probably fix it if it was a priority.
That's so counterintuitive and true. That is counterintuitive and true. And people don't want to do it, especially if you went to your Reach College, the University of Illinois in Urbana.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like
it's-
you just simplified a way to look at
Get it?
tech debt
Because I
in
got
general.
recruited for Stanford.
Just be like, if we could
That's
prioritize it, we could
You
build
want
whatever the fuck
UC
you want. It's not on the roadmap because other stuff.
Well, it builds confidence if you're aware.
Yeah.
Like if you're aware of your problems and your warts,
Yeah.
but you choose to have them, then people have confidence.
Yeah.
But it's
Finish your other point with where you went from $10 million commitment to I'll just work on the weekends. So like finish that.
oh, so
how it
I wasn't
happens.
able. So I left that relationship thinking that they weren't giving the tech team. Like I was upset at those managers at Intel and Micron. I'm like, man, these guys, they're messing it up. They don't understand innovation. But now when I understand, they're you have to understand the person you're talking to. You have to understand their KPIs, and you can even ask them like, what are your top 5 priorities for the next 3 months?
And this is talking to the exec team about like buying your Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I don't,
But then what's the I'll just work on it free on my weekends? Is
So-
that just pressing the deal forward even though they're not giving the 10 mil?
so if I could go back in time, people really, executives want soldiers, they don't want employees. So if I'm like, okay, I'm coming in at
Right.
8, I'm leaving
I
at
see what you're
5.
saying.
But if it's like, you know what, I don't give a fuck. I know this is a win. I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Next 3 weeks, sorry, sweetie. Sorry, family. I'm doing this. And if I come in and I can show, because if you don't have approval to work on a project, they're going to be upset that you did. Does that make sense? So like, if next 3 weeks I come in and say, look at what I did, isn't this amazing? I could actually be at risk of being in trouble. That, what about your other responsibilities? But if you can come in and show that, look, I did my responsibilities and I did this too, that's a very different message for an executive team. Yeah, I love talking to executives. It's super, conversations are very simple. They're very effective. You still get routed down to the tech teams, but it's a much better way to start. But any other questions? I think people can always reach out online too.
Yeah, we had a good chat.
Yeah. Hopefully the takeaway is play with semantic layers, do those structures, include that on all your calls, and for you to be successful, it's not one call. It's going to be like 4 or 5, and you could just whiteboard it too. Like, well, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and catastrophic forgetting is always going to bite you in the ass. And so do this. You do a final step where you load it. But yeah, I'll try to share more of my dev stack on the internet because it keeps getting better. The goal is to have speech-driven features, or it's totally showing up. The concept of imagining a new feature without
I'm
you.
curious, you said like 2 years you think it's going to be there. Do you think that's going to be because of you or because there's 50 other people working on this
I think it's
problem?
because there's 1,000 other people working on it. I think, like that example I gave that guy in New York one-upping me.
Yeah.
Kira.
There's thousands of people. Yeah.
That guy Kira.
Yeah. So like well, I think the other thing that's wild is anytime I realize that I'm doing something, for sure, it's
Much,
everywhere.
Of course.
So
I more like how far ahead of the curve are you? So you don't think you're ahead of the curve? You think there's 1,000 other people there with you?
I don't know. I guess you hope there are. The other thing too I was realizing is I think we're running into a scenario where we're beginning to execute more code than we have humans to review. And if that's true, then you can think of that globally. Like AI, LMs are writing massive amounts of code that are being executed without human oversight. And this brings up these systems of like safety, which I think are kind of fun to think about. Can you, how do you, so that, oh, cute dog.
Oh, thanks,
Right, so
Tom
nice
Brady.
talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you as well.
Let's take a picture.
Okay.
You want to take a picture?
Everyone.
Careful, the dog doesn't block anybody. Oh, yeah. There we go.
Well,
Nice to
yeah,
meet you guys.
yeah.
Do you mind if we add you on LinkedIn?
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
sure.
Yeah, I'll make sure I add everyone today.
I think when I saw you presenting yesterday, you were connected to a guy I know, Eric Schultz.
Eric Schultz.
Does this sound familiar? I know he's a researcher, but I think he's down in DC.
Okay, it might be. I travel around the world every month, so I know too many people.
How can I pay? Okay.
So,
Yeah,
bam.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'll walk you.
Thanks so much for sitting with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Really appreciate
And
it.
so
Yeah.
buy Hokas.
Hokas?
Hokas.
But I